Let's talk about these billionaires, as you call them, the billionaires who would pick our president. Let's start with their names. Paul Singer, Ken Langone, is it
Langone.
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 Okay, and Charles and David Koch.
Otherwise, so I wanted people to understand who these four guys who got together who were picking the president. And I just thought people should know how these guys got their money. And when we talk about we're the 99%, they're the 1%, I want to say you to know the names of the 1% and what they do that made them the 1%. And these guys are actually the 1% of the 1% of the 1%.
So let's start with Ken Langone. Let's talk about how he got his money.
A real sweetheart. Langone likes to. He's one of the founders of Home Depot. That's the one he likes to put on his resume. He's just, you're a little hardware man with an apron times 20,000. Here's your little bag of screws and make a doghouse. He's an investment banker, shark. I don't think he's ever held a hammer in his hand except to collect on late payers. But I do know one thing he's done. Besides Home Depot, he had another company that he was behind called Database Technologies, later ChoicePoint. Those who know Greg Palast, my work, probably know me first from my work discovering the purge of black voters in Florida by Katherine Harris. She had a purge list of so-called felons who couldn't vote. 58,000 people, most overwhelmingly black, almost everyone, about 80% Democrats. They lost their right to vote, and there wasn't a single illegal voter on the list. I mean, not one. The Attorney General went through the list and found 6 suspect cases, brought no charges, 56,000 names. Now, that company that created the list was Ken Langone's company, DBT. So this guy elected George Bush, or his little computer database was more powerful than our votes. And he got rewarded very well by Bush because that company that did the scrub that he was an owner of, which changed the name to ChoicePoint, got billions in bid-free war on terror contracts. And of course, all of Ken Langone's other gimmies he's an investment banker, plus he was found, Eliot Spitzer had him charged with conspiracy when Eliot Spitzer was Attorney General in New York, civil conspiracy. He had done some shenanigans involving stock transactions on the New York Stock Exchange. Langone got out on a technicality, and then he went after Spitzer. If you want to know who got Spitzer, the New York Times said it was this trickster named Roger Stone. I know Stone didn't do it. It was Ken Langone. Ken Langone had Spitzer trailed and found him cashing these, or getting money orders. It was Langone who basically went after his prosecutor, which is, I'm not quite sure, it doesn't necessarily constitute obstruction of justice under the law, but it gets, when you start going after, basically punishing prosecutors for bringing a case against you, that gets pretty dodgy. But so basically this guy had committed conspiracy against the stock market, conspiracy to defraud the market, but got away with it by going after Spitzer.
And catching him at the
I mean, he was guilty of
perjury 9, as Eddie Izzard says.
And let's not forget that one of the people still in the United States Senate is Republican Senator David Vitter. And I can't use what the prostitutes called him. He's called Vitter the Blanker because he liked to wear diapers. His name was in the phone book of the Washington Madam. Okay, so he didn't do anything different than Eliot Spitzer, except that the Republicans didn't demand that he resign. The Republicans kept him there. And he actually, after he got caught hiring prostitutes to diaper him, he made a speech about Obama's immorality. I kid you not. Okay, but that's Langone, okay, the multi-billionaire Langone.
Well, no, talk about Paul Singer. Talk about your question to him, do you know you're causing babies to die? Explain that.
Well, the way that since Ken Lay died, Paul Singer, know that name, People didn't know the Kochs now know Paul Singer. He's now the new Ken Lay, the new #1 donor to the Republican Party. He's putting all these billionaires together so they combine their funds to go behind a single candidate, okay, and to smear. Now, this guy put money into the Swift Boat campaign, to smear Kerry. This is how he operates. Huge amount of money. And where did he get it? He gets it. He's known as the Vulture. I didn't make up that name. That's the #1 donor to the Republican Party, Paul the Vulture Singer. He grabs dying industries or dying nations. In one case, in his first big billion was made by grabbing the asbestos industry. He worked directly with George Bush, with W, to change, so-called tort reform, which made it harder for asbestos workers who were dying to sue to get the asbestos companies that they work for to get compensation. Singer bought the Vulture bought the asbestos companies out of bankruptcy for basically nothing because they owed all this money to their workers. Then he basically shafted the workers out of their payments. And so suddenly these asbestos companies, which are basically poison makers, cancer makers, were suddenly worth a fortune. And he sold them for $1 billion profit. So he took a worthless company, made it $1 billion profit simply by saying, we're not going to pay those workers who are literally dying. That's his first score. Then the reason I was on top of him is that, and I'm about to go to the Congo, by the way, for another shot at this. The guy takes very, very poor countries and finds some old debt of theirs, owed to. We have one debt, the Congo owed a few bucks to Yugoslavia, or Zaire, which used to be the Congo. Neither the nation of Zaire nor the nation of Yugoslavia exists, but there's this couple million of old debt. He literally buys this debt for like a penny or two on the dollar. He's an international repo man. And then he holds a nation hostage. They can't get aid money. They can't buy medicine. They can't sell their resources. And you have nations that are coming out of civil wars where kids are dying because they can't get the food and medicine, and these guys are holding them up for ransom. If you don't pay us hundreds of millions of dollars, often 100 times what they paid for this debt, they don't just ask for the money back. They ask for 100 times. He
bought that debt for $10 million, the Congo debt, bought that debt for $10 million and demanded $400 million from the Congo.
Yeah,
Big profit.
He bought that he bought up the right to collect on these guys for $10 million. The whole total debt anyway is suspect. Now he's saying $400 million or you starve. The former Deputy General Secretary of the United Nations, a guy named Winston Tubman, I asked about these vultures. I said, what would you say, I'm trying to question, what's the question you would ask them? So this is the #2 guy at the UN. And he said, ask them if you know that you're causing babies to die. He said, that's what it comes down to. It's that simple. That's Paul Singer, #1 campaign contributor to the Republican cause. Now, just so you understand, I'm not partisan. I do investigations of Democrats. I did vote fixing by Democrats in New Mexico. It's not a partisan issue. It's a money issue. It's not about Democrats. It's about democracy. I'm very concerned. I'm not part of any political party in the U.S., but I'm very concerned that these guys are picking our president with their unlimited resources. And then, of course, then that's Paul the Vulture Singer. Then you get to the Koch brothers. People think that they've heard everything you need to know about the Koch brothers because, since the New Yorker article. But if you go to gregpalast.com, you'll see the Koch brothers got a big hunk of their original billions. And now the two brothers are worth $22 billion apiece. $22 billion apiece. One of their first billions was made by taking oil from Indian reservations, the Osage Indian Reservation in Oklahoma. Okay, they had a contract to take the oil, but they took a lot more oil than they ever paid for. They cheated. They would have their trucks. They'd say, okay, we're taking 100 barrels from this tank, and they take 110 barrels. It added up to $1 billion, over $1 billion in stolen oil. They stole the oil. And and so what happens when you steal? If you or I steal, a can of Coke from a bodega, we're going to go to the can. This guy steals $1 billion of oil from these dirt poor natives on an Indian reservation who own these wells. The reservation owned the wells. And the answer, what happened was, the FBI actually filmed the theft going on, and here's the deal. Charles Koch, already a billionaire, this was his second billion, not his first. Charles Koch personally ordered the theft, according to witnesses we have, and according to a secret wire kept on an executive that worked with Koch. And Koch was just saying, his executive asked Koch, well, why are you taking, you're already worth $1 billion. Why are you taking a few bucks from, like, these really poor Indians? He asked him. And Koch said, I want what's coming to me. I want what's coming to me, and that's all of it. He wants everything. And all of it is the White House now. These are the guys. And by the way, they got out of... Yeah.
Investigation. I just wanted to mention with this FBI investigation, Senators Bob Dole and Don Nichols stepped in.
That's right.
And he didn't end up being arrested. No charges were filed,
no
even though,
charges.
as you said, this was taped.
It was taped. It was videotaped, audio taped. You name it. Witnesses, eyewitnesses saying Koch ordered it. No charges, criminal charges against the company. No, and no charges at all against Koch. And the natives, they had to pay some money to, like $25 million to get rid of them. But Dennis DeConcini, the senator from Arizona, was running the government. He ran the committee which handled the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And he said, this is the biggest total straight-up theft. How come these guys are being let off the hook? He wrote in the committee's report, signed by Republicans and Democrats, was that this was a case of massive and obvious fraud and theft, and nothing was done. And he wrote that report. It was courageous for the Democratic senator, to write that, because he told me, Senator DeConcini told me personally, that Koch went to him and said, you continue, you write this report, and your political career is dead. His political career was dead. That's what happens.
And it is, correct.
It's it. So in other words, just like the way that Langone got Spitzer, they got DeConcini. In other words, they're going to, you take these guys on, there's like no mercy. So number one, they pick the guys they want who will do what they want. And number two, you get in their way. They'll swift boat you. They'll trail you. They will ruin your career, your political career. They'll fund your opponents to the hilt legally or illegally. And, that's what we've seen. Now, it's, since there's no rules, they can do just about whatever they want money-wise. And they will. These are not guys who give $500. Used to be that you could go on, check out these donations and see, someone give $1,000 or $10,000, even $100,000. It was considered a big deal when Ken Lay was giving $100,000 to GOP. That's nothing. These guys put in tens of millions of dollars in various so-called independent committees. It is a whole different game that they're playing. And the fact that they are combining, I don't care what party you're in, this has got to scare you. Your vote doesn't count for anything. When you got these 4 billionaires, and they're inviting others into the game, when you got these 4 billionaires working together, we don't stand a chance unless, and there's always that bright hope, that those kids and the union leaders chanting in Wall Street, in the end, they can only steal so many votes by DBT and Felon, Scrubless, and the rest. In the end, we still have the people and the votes if we don't want, the Billionaire Boys Club to run the White House.
And that's